Welcome. So now we're live on screen. So welcome to this ordinary meeting of Mount Alexander Shire Council, the 18th of August 2020. To start the official proceedings, I'd like to acknowledge that we're meeting on Jara country, of which the members and elders of the Jara community and their forebears have been custodians for many centuries and have performed age-old ceremonies of celebration, initiation, and renewal. We acknowledge their living culture and their unique role in the life of this region. I got lost there for a minute. Council meetings are audio and video recorded. 5 of the Act states that council meetings may be closed to the public during the prescribed period, 1st of May 2020 to the 1st of November 2020, provided it is live streamed and the community have been provided means to submit statements or questions for council response. This is to ensure that local government decision making can continue and remains transparent. So councils, do I have a motion at this stage? Yes, Councillor Neiman. Councillor Neiman, you're muted. You need to switch your microphone on. Sorry. Thank you. That's much better. Would you like to now put forward your motion? Thank you.
Recommendation that the council, 1, closes the ordinary meeting of council 18th August 2020 under the Local Government Act 2020 Part 12 Section 395, and notes that where there are technical difficulties in being able to broadcast the meeting to the public, the meeting will be adjourned for 30 minutes until the issue is resolved or postponed to 6 p.m. 25th of August 2020.
And a seconder, motion.
Happy to second, Mayor.
Councillor Trusler, is there any opposition? I declare the matter carried. Thank you. So I have on the screen all 7 councillors and our CEO. So no apologies. Declarations of interest or conflict of interest. Councillor Machin. Councillor Machin, would you like to declare the nature of your conflict of interest?
It is in relation to 10.3.1, adoption of the 2021 budget. And I'm declaring a conflict of interest because I am on the board of an organisation which will receive funds. So I've forgotten the exact what sort of a conflict that is now that I'm put on the spot. Sorry, Mayor, could you help me out on that?
I'm not too sure. Never mind. So we, well, it might be that we can deal with the motion for that very important item in a couple of parts to allow you to be part of the debate for the non-conflicted part. So we will see to that when we get there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor.
So now we go to the confirmation of minutes. First of all, the ordinary meeting of council for the 21st of July 2020. Councillors, do I have a motion that they be confirmed? Councillor Cordy.
Thanks, Mayor. I'd move the recommendation as written that the minutes of the ordinary meeting of the Mount Alexander Shire Council held on 21st of July 2020 be confirmed. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor. Opposition? I have not. No, good. So that carried. And the special meeting of council on the 28th of July,
yes.
Which was, yes, Councillor, Deputy Mayor Max Lepper.
Yep,
Yes,
that I move that the minutes of the special meeting of the Mount Alexander Shire Council held on 28th July 2020 be confirmed.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Patricia. No opposition, so I declare that matter carried. Now at this point, before we go to public question time, I'd just like to make an acknowledgement. Ballet, Mrs. Olive Penno. Council acknowledges the contribution to the community of Mrs. Olive Penno. Mrs. Olive Penno passed away on the 4th of August 2020 this year, aged 92 years. She was a lifelong resident of Taradale up to the last few months of her life, which were spent in Kyneton's Ray Embeg aged care facility. Olive served her community generously throughout her life, being an active member of no less than 12 committees, both in Taradale and beyond. Possessing a remarkable memory, Olive's ability to provide a historical perspective on issues was much valued. She loved gardening, was a keen land care supporter, and leaves a legacy of beautiful tree-lined streets in her hometown. As an elected representative, Councillor Olive Penno served on the Metcalfe Shire Council for over 11 years. She was awarded Mount Alexander Citizen of the Year in 1996. Council acknowledges the life of Mrs. Olive Penno and offers condolences to her family and friends on their sad loss. Thank you. And now we'll move to public question time. And I guess I do call for a motion to suspend standing orders here. No, I don't have to, CEO, do I? Because we're all still as normal. So I don't need to suspend standing orders to read out a question from a member of the public, unless they unexpectedly pop up on the screen, in which case I'll get a great surprise. So we have one question tonight. It's from Mr. Ken Hovenden, and the question is, although I appreciate the response to our complaint by council and welcome any works to improve the intersection of Main Road and Steele Street, I would still like the question regarding the issue of a notice of decision to any objectors to be addressed. In the content of the response, it is stated that the decision to approve the subdivision with the excluded Vic Roads condition was not contested by any of the objectors. The reason for this is that no objector received any notice that this had occurred and didn't even know about it until it was too late to contest. Will council investigate this matter properly and provide an answer as to what has occurred here? Yours sincerely, Ken Hovenden. And I think to reply to that, I think I call for our Director of Infrastructure and Development, Ms. Howard, to provide a response, please.
Thank you, Mayor. As councillors would be aware, there is a response to a petition from a number of residents in and around Steele Street, Chewton, as part of tonight's council meeting. In addition to that, and specifically in response to the question that Mr. Hovenden raises, officers have investigated the question that he's raised about the notice being provided to the objectors. Council records show that the 8 objectors to this matter received a notice of decision in August, shortly after the council decision was made. And Mr. Hovenden has been advised of this today by council officers directly.
Thank you, Ms. Hunt. Thank you for that. Yes, that's good. I'm glad they were notified. Thank you. So now, that's the only question in public question time. So I think that completes public question time for tonight. And we'll move on to petitions. So we've received a petition request for improvements to footpaths on Duke Street, Castlemaine. And on 3rd of July, council received a petition from residents. So I've got a recommendation here. Do I have a motion, councillors?
I'm happy to move
Yes,
the motion as per the recommendation, Mayor.
Which is?
Council receive a report on the petition from residents with 41 signatories requesting that council provide safe access by way of a level form path from the corner of Duke Street east to Montgomery Street at the next council meeting.
Thank you, Councillor Patricia. And Councillor Machen, I saw you had your hand up, so I'll take you as a seconder. Any opposition to that motion? Nope, I'll declare that. Oh, Councillor Neiman, are you objecting?
Yes, yes, I was.
All right.
The objection is that the. Sorry.
Well, if you're opposing the motion, then I think we're going to have a debate. Councillor Patricia, would you like to speak to your motion or just have it stand as is?
Okay, well, it's pretty much just a procedural matter, but we have a report on the petition. We've received the petition with the 41 signatures, and it's just I'm only moving a procedural matter that we accept that petition and that we have a report available for the next council meeting in relation to their request.
Pretty much a procedural motion. Councillor Newman, you wish to?
Yes, the recommendation as it reads is saying that we're going to provide the pathway at the next council meeting. I wonder where are we going to put it?
All right. I see.
So it's just a procedural thing, but it reads wrongly.
Mayor, I'm happy to amend the motion if it's ambiguous. I didn't read it that way, but it could be construed as being ambiguous.
Right. We need an English teacher here, I think. So have we got some alternative wording for it?
Yes.
Yeah, Councillor Machen wished to come in here. I think she might have a solution to our problem. Yes, Councillor Machen.
So if we remove the last clause, which is at the next council meeting, to that council receives a report at the next council meeting. So it's just a cut and paste.
So that would
We
read,
now read, receive a
report
report at the next council meeting on the petition from residents, blah, blah, blah. Yes, it's a bit clumsy, but I think we should be able to take it as it is meant, Councillor Neiman. Let's not get too fussy.
I'm happy with that variation, Mayor.
all right. So for the purpose of the records, we now have a slightly reworded motion, but it's the same sentence. I don't think we called an amended one. That council receive a report at the next council meeting on the petition from residents with 41 signatories requesting that council provide safe access by way of a level form path from the corner of Duke Street east to Montgomery Street.
Excellent.
Thank you, Councillor Machen. Just to be clear, do all councillors approve of this? Do I have those in favour? Thank you. And so those against? No. So the matter is passed unanimously now, slightly tidied up wording. Thank you very much all. Now for committee reports, we have the Goldfields Library Corporation Board meeting minutes, and we need to note those. So someone moving that. Thank you, Councillor Machen, our loyal representative on that board. Your motion is to note those, presumably, and do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Cordy. Any opposition? I hope not. We're just noting them. So I declare that matter carried. Thank you. Now, record of assemblies of councillors. Once again, pretty much procedure. We must note these. Records of assemblies of councillors. So a motion to note these assemblies of councillors. Thank you, Councillor Gardner.
I just also need to make a small amendment. I was actually present in the meeting on the 14th of the 7th.
On the 14th of the 7th,
Yeah.
Page 11 of our agenda. And your name doesn't appear. Goodness
No.
me. Oh, well, it was by Zoom. Maybe you were. Thank you. So I'm sure our record keeper is able to note that and amend the record. Apart from that, are you happy to move
Yep.
these then?
As printed. Yep. Yep.
Thank you. That correction. And seconded by Councillor Machen. Thank you. And I assume there's no opposition to that. All right, well, we get to our officer reports now. And the first one is a pretty important one. Adoption of annual plan 2020-2021. Yes, Councillor Gardner. Are you moving the motion?
Yes, sorry, I'm struggling with mute buttons and technology, but I am moving as printed.
Thank you. I just have to move your hand a bit off. I can't quite see if it's open or closed sometimes. So if you want to indicate that you're voting or something, you might want to bring it in front of your face. Hand, that is. I can see. technology. Okay, so I've got a mover for councillor adopting the annual plan 2020-2021. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Machin. Is there any opposition? No. Councillor Cordy, are you opposing the motion or is the question?
Mayor, it's just a minor issue in relation to the council plan. There's one item there that I do have a concern about, and I just want to clarify. So included in the plan, it talks about design of a waste recovery facility. I just want to understand that that waste recovery, the design of the waste recovery facility doesn't sort of include approval to go ahead with the construction of the waste facility. Because I think sometimes it can create an expectation, and I think there's a lot of work needed on that project, and I just voice my concern that it's noted in the plan, and I just want to make sure that it doesn't sort of force a decision for perhaps the next council that being committed to actually go ahead with construction on a project that may or may not meet council's requirements at the time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. If I call on Howard, our Director of Infrastructure, just to make a comment on that, because I know using the term design in a document like this, which just we do use short sentences, design can actually cover an awful lot of things. So would you like to maybe elaborate a bit, if you can, I'm without any notice here, Ms. Howard, on that item in the annual plan about designing the waste recovery facility or for furthering it?
Thank you, Mayor. And yes, it is a design of the facility that would then come back to council for decision on how to proceed, including how to fund that project. And it also includes a significant amount of community engagement and consultation into that design process over the next 12 months.
Thank you. In fact, aren't we setting up a steering group or something to oversee that?
That's correct, Mayor. There will be a reference group set up with community representation.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Cordy. I think it's very important to know that. All right, well, having sorted that, the annual plan has been moved by Councillor Gardner and seconded. I haven't quite got a seconder yet. Oh, seconded by Councillor Machin. Now, with Councillor Cordy's reservation on there, but maybe sorted a bit, is there any opposition? No. Okay, well, Councillor Gardner, would you like to speak to your motion? Please do.
Yes, I'm just sorry, I'm dealing with 10 screens. Thank you for that. So before us, councillors, is the proposed annual plan for 2020 and 21. I do need to note and make a comment that this is a plan that council's been part of, but obviously the new council could come along and amend it, and that will be their right, I suppose. But within it, I do want to highlight that there are some really good projects in this. Obviously, there's a couple of modern ones in there for the to finish the streetscape project and the design guidelines. I'm also really keen and excited to see a feasibility study in the aged care and NDIS space. But I think, councillors, in this, there are a number of really good projects. These are really sort of our headline projects, because obviously there's a lot more that gets done than this. And it really gives our staff and our community an idea of where we're going and what we're going to do. Now, within that, there's also a section that talks about prior year actions, and they're all on target to occur. And I think the dog park has actually happened when it says it's going to happen in October. So that's a good thing. So I would just ask that my fellow councillors approve it.
Thank you, Councillor Gardner. Councillor Newton, would you like to speak?
Thank you for that really good introduction, Councillor Gardner. Mayor, when you speak, you need to be moving right forward to the microphone. You sometimes go out. So,
I just received a note from our production manager to say that.
so I can't hear you very well when you're that far away. So it's a great thing to have seen through from the beginning of the all the consultation we did as the beginning councillors of this term to develop a council plan, and then this is the last of them. And as Councillor Gardner says, if the new council has a good look at the budget and COVID has an impact, they might have to change that halfway through, which would then impact on this. But what I'm really pleased to see is some very good initiatives in here. And some of them, you know, sound really boring, but the asset management plans for the drainage infrastructure assets, this is fundamental to really good use of our capital grants. I was really interested that Councillor Cordy thought 150,000 might actually get works on the ground at the resource centre. I think that would be the cheapest thing that would ever happen at the resource centre, but I'm very glad that's going ahead with all the community consultation. And of course, our response to climate change is very important to us as a community. I think there's, I saw a report from Coliban Water that we can expect a 50% chance of a climate change event happening each year. So we have to be ready for that. And again, I see that we're working on, we've even already started working on emergency planning for the bushfire season. As the rain pours down. So it's a very good plan. And even though there are some things that haven't been directly addressed, they've been addressed in other things that we do. So I can say as a council that we've worked very hard with our community and with our officers to deliver, and will continue to deliver as necessary. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Machen. Does any other councillor wish to speak on the annual plan? No? All right, thank you. Oh, yes, Councillor Cordy.
I just speak briefly, Mayor. I noticed today that the Stanley Park Playground is under construction, so that's included in the plan, and there's actually works going on the ground. So that's a great project, and I'm sure the council will be very proud of it when it's completed. So well done to all concerned. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cordy. And yes, Councillor Gardner, congratulations for getting your NDIS project in there. Pleased to see that. That was, you drove that. And I share Councillor Machen's excitement about the asset management plan for our drainage, having seen the ones for footpaths and bridges. I think when I first became a councillor, drainage was a very boring subject, but now, especially after a couple of floods, I know just how important it is to our well-being of everyone and to the health of our roads and footpaths. So yes, terrific stuff. All right, well, if there being no opposition to that, I declare the annual plan 2020-2021 to be carried and adopted. And we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the Mount Alexander Middle Years Plan 2020 to 2023. And Councillor Lester is pointing at me, saying he wishes to move that. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Neiman, thank you. Is there any opposition? No. Councillor Lester, would you like to speak to your motion, please?
Yes, well, first of all,
first of all, tell me what your motion is.
Yes, that's what I just about to do. Okay, the motion is, as the recommendation is, the council notes the amendments made to the draft Mount Alexander Middle Years Plan 2020 to 2023 following its public exhibition, and 2, adopts the Mount Alexander Middle Years Plan 2020 to 2023. Yes, Mayor, I do like to have a a bit of a say about this. I have made a few notes. Okay, this plan demonstrates Council's commitment to improving the health and well-being of children and families in our Shire, which is really important. And it follows on from the excellent work being done in Council's early years plan, which I'm involved with as well. And I've attended the community engagement forums that have been held to discuss, formulate this current plan that's being presented here tonight. Now, middle years is a tough gig, and everybody who has kids would know that. For kids, having been involved with this cohort, I've been involved with them for well over 20 years, and I know how hard it is for the kids that are involved. Now, the preamble to this report states the middle years of childhood form a significant period of individual growth in a child's life. And that is really important. And from the community discussions and engagement, 3 priority areas were identified. And they're also included in the report: happy and safe kids, active and adventurous kids, connected kids, and families. Now, the majority of the middle years plan was formulated prior to the COVID-19 lockdowns. And delivering the middle years plan in the current and future environment is going to present many challenges. And like all of Council's community activities, modifications to existing plans will need to be considered. Now, I know, sort of personally, that I like to get out and about and engage with young people, but I can't at the moment. So it's tough on me. And I can imagine what it's like for the middle years age group of 8 to 12 years of age and what those kids might be going through. So this plan, and I guess the modifications of this plan to reflect the current situation, is absolutely paramount. And look, these are our kids, our community, and their lives will be forever changed. So can we all get behind this council middle years plan and support its implementation for our kids' sake? Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Lesser. Councillor Neiman, do you wish to speak?
Just very briefly, it was an administrative second, but I noticed generally around Newstead particularly, a lot of family homes are being built. So anecdotally, I suspect we've turned the corner as far as attracting younger people and younger families. Very important.
Middle years plan will be important. Thank you. Any other councillor wish to speak? No? Well, there being no opposition, I declare the matter carried. Thank you. And we move on to another item, sale of lot 10, PS 629772, Fitzgerald Court, Wesley Hill Business Park. Now, do I have a motion on this? Yeah, Councillor Petrusma.
I'm happy to move as per the recommendation, but I'll read it out. The
Please do.
council considers the single submission made under section 223 of the Local Government Act 1989, which supports the sale of lot 10, and authorises the CEO to accept an offer on lot 10 at PS 629772 at Wesley Hill Business Park, where the offer is equal to or above the independent valuation required under section 189 of the Local Government Act 1989, and 3, authorises the CEO to sign all documentation required to execute the sale in accordance with the above.
Thank you, Councillor Petrusma. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Neiman, thank you. Is there any opposition? Councillor Petrusma, would you like to speak to your motion?
Just briefly, there's still quite a number of unsold lots in the Wesley Hill Business Park at stage 2. Council has been looking at that area in relation to possible future development for a council depot. That may or may not happen. It'll be something for in the future and probably up to the next council. But there's a particular lot there, lot 10, which is not required by council. It is available to be sold. We have a person expressing interest in it that wants to set up a business, which will presumably create employment and a financial benefit to the Shire and as a whole, and particularly Castlemaine. So therefore, I urge my fellow councillors to support the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Petrusa. Councillor Newman?
Yes, it sort of follows on from the observation around Newstead of houses being built. We're providing work for younger people, which is a good thing. That's it.
Thank you. Any other councillor wish to speak? No. There being no opposition, I declare the matter carried. And I hope that that works out very well for the purchaser and his neighbour. Good. So the next item is response to petition Steele Street, Tewton, entrance from Pyrenees Highway. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Gardner.
Yep, as printed.
Maybe would you like to read it out, given that we don't have any copies on the screen?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
Okay.
So the recommendation is that council agree to undertake design work in relation to minor widening at the mouth of Steele Street, Tewton, as well as minor widening of the seal on the north side of the Pyrenees highways for consideration by Regional Roads Victoria, and responds to the first signatory on the petition to advise them that council officers will investigate the possibility of minor works to improve the intersection.
Thank you, Councillor Gardner. Do I have a seconder for this motion? Yeah, Councillor Lesser. Yep. Is there any opposition? No. Councillor Gardner, would you like to? Oh, Councillor Petrusa, or is that opposing the motion?
Not opposition, but no, I'm not going to oppose it, but I would like to speak to it. Sorry.
Good, good. Okay. Well, Councillor Gardner, I'll let you open the debate.
Well, I wasn't going to speak to it, but now I will. Thank you, David. So I was actually probably the councillor who sought this amendment on the planning application, which was essentially, and I did it for a reason. I suppose for me, I went and saw the development. It was 6 blocks, from memory. It wasn't much more. And the recommendation from Vic Roads, it wasn't a, it was a, I'm not sure how we categorize it. So it wasn't a mandatory, it was a, a good thing to do. I felt it was somewhat unreasonable that the developer would have to wear the cost of, when I say developer, I mean, it's not really a developer, it's a person who bought a block of land, was restoring the original heritage and was selling some other bits off. So I didn't classify him as a developer. I thought it was quite unreasonable that he would have to bear the cost of a major upgrade, and he probably couldn't afford it. So that's why I moved it. So this probably caused it. Having said that, I'm supportive of this motion to sort of finalise this issue, but I must admit, personally, I'm not really that enthusiastic about the council paying for it. So the solution that's found, I hope, is reflective of the fact that it was a very small subdevelopment and increases, I think, of 6 households that, to me, isn't going to make such a big problem there. But as I said, I am supporting this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Gardner. Councillor Lesser, did you wish to speak?
Not really, Mayor. I'm supporting what Councillor Gardner is saying, and I'm happy about that.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Petrusa.
Okay. I had considered speaking against it, but I'm not going to vote against it. I just wanted to express my concerns in relation to, as councillors, we do good things in good faith, and I've got no doubt Councillor Gardner did this in good faith on the night. I was overseas at the time, so I wasn't aware that this particular motion had passed and had been altered from the recommendation and wasn't part of the discussions prior. But I just express my concern that when we do these things and do changes on the fly on the night, I mean, we do them in good faith, but I think we are better to put the matter on the table for a month and seek further advice for such major changes, because what's now happened is that, as it turns out, it probably really does need some widening works at the mouth of Steele Street to make this safe. And even though putting land into 6 lots is not a huge subdivision, in that particular street, it is a considerable number more houses than what already existed. I think it was 7 or 8 houses existing previously. And so an extra 6 allotments in that particular scenario, even though it seems small, actually did make a substantial difference. And if you consider, 2 vehicles per property, normally that's a fair bit extra traffic. So I think that probably it should have been put on the table for some further advice. If a person developing the land, subdividing for a profit, is not responsible, I'm not quite sure who is. So I understand that it's been split before, but when somebody comes in and decides to split that further with the view of making as a profitable enterprise, a developer is probably the only word you can use. And if that then increases the traffic, and Vic Roads wanted the mouth of the street widened to take that into account, I really think that then was a matter of a developer, if he wasn't happy with that condition, to appeal it or to not go ahead with the proposal. As it is now, every resident in the Shire is going to pay. So, I just want to express my concern that we probably need to do things better in future.
Thank you, Councillor Petruska. Wise words. Any other councillor wish to speak? No. When I declare the matter carried, and I would like to support all of you in a way, really, Councillor Gardner, because it was the Vic Roads proposal, as I recall, was a major reconfiguration of the road, which would have involved a couple of extra lanes being put in, and it would have been extremely expensive. However, as Councillor Petruska pointed out, for councillors to quickly negotiate with our planning staff a sorting out of the conditions on the night was probably a very wrong thing to do. Hindsight is a great thing, and I'm sure it'll be written into somewhere about councillor training, we hope, for the next council, not to do that kind of thing, because it doesn't really work out very well in the end. But hopefully this will lead to a better outcome for everyone living in Steele Street. Delightful place, and you don't want to be, every time you're leaving to go out to the outside world, be in fear of having a collision with someone, or when you have to come back. It's not a good way to be. So we hope that it sorts out the problem. Thank you, councillors. I'll move on to the next matter, which is the roadmap to carbon neutrality. Just a small thing. Do I have a motion for this?
Yes, you do.
Oh, Councillor Neiman. Yes.
The motion is the recommendation as written, that council adopts the roadmap to carbon neutrality emissions reduction plan for our operations in 2020 to 2025.
Thank you, Councillor Neiman. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Mason. Why am I not surprised to see your hand up? Thank you. And is there any opposition? No. Thank you. Were you waving to express opposition?
No,
Councillor?
I'm probably not going to vote against it, but again, I've got something I want to speak about in this one too.
Great. That's what we like. Okay, thank you. Councillor Neiman, would you like to speak to your motion, please?
Well, I think that if we go to page 37 and read the bold, I'll just read it out to do. Approving and implementing a roadmap that will lead to zero net emissions for council operations by 2025, ensuring that all actions are informed by cost benefit analysis to ensure that council invests in actions with the best returns while maintaining its services and a sustainable long-term budget. This is an oversight document, as far as I can see, and it's compartmentalized so that we can attack any of the things that create climate change stuff. The carbon neutrality, which is associated with the climate change. All in all, it's an excellent document, and it's incredibly clear to me. That's all.
Thank you, Councillor Newman. Councillor Nathan, would you like
I'd
to
like
speak?
to speak last. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Petruska, you've already indicated you'd like to speak. Would you like to speak now?
Yeah, I'll speak now. Look, I'm not speaking against the document. I think it's a wonderful aspiration. If we can actually succeed in getting a carbon neutral net emissions by 2025, I completely agree with that part of it. And I'm really happy with the bold paragraph just pointed out by Councillor Neiman. I just wanted to express my concerns that if council heading towards 2025 doesn't quite meet the idea of zero net emissions, I just want to express my concern about purchasing carbon offsets as a means of obtaining those zero net emissions, and that will really ultimately be up to whatever council is in at that time, and it probably won't even be the next council. It could well be the one after that. But I just want to express my concern about carbon offsets. It's a really unknown cost factor. The market changes all the time, and depending on what the amount is, it could be anywhere between $50,000 and $500,000. So it's an unknown cost. You know, I agree with the document, but I have real concerns about if the council at that time has to pay money to achieve the target. That's all.
Thank you, Councillor Petruska. Yes, Councillor Gardner.
Oh, well, I might as well have a talk on it. Thanks,
Yeah.
David. I must admit, I share your view on that, and I've never really been too keen on the proposition that around about that time, if zero emissions isn't reached, that council will have to buy offsets. But the reality is, it's not our problem, this council, and it's not the next problem either, because it's the one after. So hopefully by then it's happened. I just want to say though, I think climate change in particular is a very divisive issue in our community. Some for, against. It's sort of gone very quiet recently, obviously with COVID. Other things have taken over. And I voted for this, of course, at the meeting. And it is an issue that sort of been forgotten recently, but I suspect it will be coming back, particularly. And I know that people sort of say, I've heard recently quite often that, oh, we've had a drought, now we've got flood, so it's raining. So it's sort of all over. But the science still doesn't back that up, I'm afraid. So a lot of this work for council, and I know people can get a bit hysterical about climate change and it's going to cost the world and everything. Most of this is actually about council adopting its way it operates, so it should save us money in the long term. Yeah, so that's all I want to say, and obviously I'm supportive of this plan.
Thank you, Councillor Gardner. Yes, Councillor Corey.
Mayor, thanks for that. Look, I really strongly support the roadmap to carbon neutrality. I'd like to see council continue on the path and on the good work that's being done in terms of managing and reducing emissions from our operations. In relation to carbon credits, it is likely, in my view, that as we get to the end of this, it's going to be a necessary component if we are going to get to zero. But what I'd like to see council do in the future is work with the local community and build on the excellent work that's being done within our shire in terms of in terms of environmental works and carbon offsetting works, and see that as a first option rather than working with our community to see what we can achieve locally before we go outside. But yeah, I strongly support the way we're headed with to zero net emissions for our operations. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cordy. Anyone else wish to speak? Well, I think you've just about all spoken. Councillor Lesser? No, silent on the matter. All right, well, there being no opposition. Oh, Councillor Machen, my goodness me, the good fairy in the background has to speak. I thought there was something wrong. I beg your pardon. Please, would you like to speak?
Thank you, and thank you everyone for the support on this one, because we're leaving a fairly tough legacy for our children, not just through COVID, but through climate change. This plan appears to be on the surface quite linear. We'll replace this source of power with that source of power, which is cleaner, but it's actually a bit more subversive. And it is about inviting us to think of redoing our business models. And it is something that our whole community is going to have to do. We can't just keep doing what we were doing with a slightly different type of energy. So we have, as Councillor Cordy has mentioned, an absolutely fabulous opportunity to invest in regenerative farming, which has got one of the biggest capacities for drawdown of carbon that absolutely exists. So when we're thinking about this, it's not just we're going to have renewable energy. It is about, okay, where's the best investment? We might not get to zero emissions, but we might be investing in something that draws down even more than we're using. So it is about circular thinking. And I reckon that's a very important thing that we keep in mind. It's about innovation. It's about perceiving different ways of doing business, of doing relationships, of doing partnerships. And the community transition plan is starting, and I think out of that will come also many opportunities for the community to think about exciting different ways of doing things. And this is really, I hope that the council in 2 terms time is reporting back to our kids to say, we've actually worked together with you all, and we've now got a stronger community in terms of social, economic and environmental terms. And this is our first step into that, and it's a really good one. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mason. All right, well, without opposition, I'll declare the matter carried, and congratulate everyone for speaking. Congratulate our officers for putting together this very impressive report. It's jam-packed full of plans and principles and targets and ways to get there. So much detail, not for the faint-hearted, but some very exciting stuff in there. And I'm pleased to hear that our agriculturalist on council is highly supportive and is looking forward to the opportunities for regenerative agriculture to deliver those all-important offsets, because the time when we could have a truly carbon neutral, zero carbon outfit is a long way off, but carbon neutral, where we have offsets to do the balance, is within our grasp, or within the grasp, as people point out, of the council, not the next council, but the one after. Lovely. So a long-term legacy there, and this one is now set to go till 2025, and hopefully it will serve as a good roadmap for the next 5 years. Thank you. Right, well, another small item, the 2020-2021 budget. Time to adopt that. Now, Councillor Machen, you have a bit of a conflict of interest here.
Yes, Mayor, I have.
Can you give a bit more detail there?
An indirect interest, conflict of interest, of conflicting duty, as I am on the board of Castlemaine Community House, and part of the budget includes funds for neighbourhood houses.
Right. indirect interest or conflicting duty because you're on the board of Castlemaine House.
Castlemaine
And-
Community House.
Sorry, I beg your pardon, Castlemaine Community House. And I see that we have the item 1 on the of the recommended motion is to allocate money for community lunches. So I think maybe this is where we, yes, Councillor Cordy.
Mayor, if you like, I would move a motion to deal with that that first item of the recommendation, and if governance can take Councillor Mason out of the room for the moment, we can deal with that, and then deal with the budget in its entirety as a second item, or the rest of it.
Thanks, Councillor Cordy. That's like a very good idea. So, Ms. Shepherd, are you able to remove Councillor Machin from our meeting for the time being? I hope you can get back in, Councillor Machin. I had a lot of trouble earlier. Please come back. Okay. Post disabled post. Let me see. So, oh, she needs a seconder. Okay. So can we have a seconder, please, to split up the motion? Councillor Max Lesser has moved that. Any opposition? No, thank you. Yes, it's moved. So Ms. Shepherd, can you now disappear? Yes, she's gone. Right. Okay. So Councillor Cordy, would you like to move your motion, please?
Yes, Mayor. So it's just the first part of the officer's recommendation in that council allocates 20,000 for community lunches to be distributed between the Castlemaine, Maldon and Newstead organisations responsible for providing those services.
Those services being the community lunch. Right. Okay, thank you. Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Petruska, had his hand up first. Any opposition? No. Councillor Cordy, you wish to speak to that motion?
Just to say that the community lunches are an important networking under normal circumstances. They wouldn't be running at the moment with under COVID conditions, but it's a great thing that council supports these community lunches. So that's a good initiative of council. Thank you.
Thank you. No. Okay. Well, there being no opposition, I declare that matter carried. And so that part of the budget has been dealt with. And I've got another message. Oh dear. All right. I have to stay forward. This is quite difficult. I've got a lot of papers in front of me. Can you hear me? Yes, good. All right. So now, Ms. Shepherd, could we have Councillor Machin back into the room, please, or into the screen? Waving your hands or something. Thank you. Just trying to bring her back. Okay. Oh dear. I hope Councillor Machin hasn't disappeared. Oh dear. Oh. Technology. But we have had meetings where I think Councillor Machin will probably be okay with that. So we have the rest of the budget motion to move. I've got a long recommendation here. Councillor Gardner.
I would like to move an alternative motion.
Alternative to what's printed, you mean?
Yeah.
Okay. It's very long. What do you wish to move?
Well, basically to defer the decision of this budget to a further council meeting to consider a rate increase of 0% and change the commercial differential rate from 130% to 100%.
Right. So not to move the budget, but to defer it, to consider a 0% rate rise. Yep. And to reduce the commercial rate to 100%. Couple of small items. Yep. Thank you. Do I have a seconder for Councillor Gardner's motion?
Yes. I'll
Thank you. Thank you,
second.
Councillor. You second that motion. Thank
Yes.
you. Is there any opposition? Thank you. Well, in that case, Councillor Gardner, would you like to begin your debate by presenting your motion and speaking to it?
Certainly. I must admit, it's not something I'm easy in doing, but I feel I have to, so I am doing it. I mean, this is a good budget, and there's no doubt about that. When we first started to talk about this budget, it was last November, and the things back then, obviously, things have changed dramatically with COVID-19. And in my opinion, in the last few months, it's actually deteriorated worse. And it's highly likely we're going to be living in some form of isolation, at least till Christmas, and probably post. Now, they might not be in a current lockdown 3, but we're going to be living with it for a while. And I also note in the budget submissions, whilst there wasn't very many, there was only 6. Half of them, so 3 of them, actually requested the council consider a 0 rate rise. I think that's reflective out in the community, and it is something that I'm constantly asked by just about everyone. How can council increase our rates at this time and we can't afford it? And I do agree with this sentiment. Whilst a 2% increase doesn't sound much, and the reality is for some houses, it's only going to be $20. Some will be more, some will be less. But I think at the moment, everything matters. And for me, I just would like it to be considered. Now, I know that the cost of this is possibly going to be around about $400,000 to $500,000 as a one-off cost. We basically just can't keep raising rates and charges. We actually also need to make sure and look at our expenditure and bring it in line. We will have revenue drop out on us. There's no doubt about it this year. And so whatever happens, the next council, probably around Christmas or just after, we'll have to do a review of this budget to try and bring it back into line. So what I'm suggesting is that by doing this, we will start that process now. We have to put downward pressure on expenses, and particularly in operational and or some of our projects, one of them has to drop. Whilst it is a financial responsible budget, I just think that we have to do what is right by our community, and a 0% rate rise is one, and also ensuring that our businesses, which majority are struggling, aren't going to have a rate increase either. So therefore, I'd like my fellow councillors to at least consider this.
Well, now I've disappeared. You caused the internet to have a great, everyone's muted. No?
No.
I've frozen. Can anyone hear me? Can you
Yes, I
wave
can.
if you can hear me, please?
I can hear you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, can't see myself. Can you see me?
No.
Oh dear. Councillor Bronwyn Machen has appeared in name anyway, so the only person that's not visible is me. Okay, start my video, that might help. There we go.
Yes.
Yeah, my internet dropped out for a minute there. I can still hear you, Councillor Gardner, but my Zoom, anyway, never mind, we're back. Thank you. So Councillor Gardner has spoken passionately. Let's speak. Center of this motion.
That was Max.
So
Councillor
think-
Lesser, do you wish to speak as the move of the seconder of this motion?
well, I seconded the motion to give Councillor Gardner a chance to express his opinion. It is a difficult situation. I think that he has some merit. We should have perhaps discussed this earlier on. Now it's getting a bit late in the piece. I do understand that there will be changes, even if the budget as is approved, there will be changes as it goes along because of the situations that we find ourselves in. And this will happen to all council works and projects. So it's a hard one, because if we don't get some money in, well, we've got to drop something. We haven't decided what it is we'd have to drop. And there's a legacy. We were talking earlier about climate change and the legacy for our future. If we don't go ahead with this particular rate rise, I guess there'll be a legacy in that. So I've really just wanted to just give Councillor Gardner a chance to air his views rather than not being seconded. So I haven't made my mind up either way yet, but that was my main reason for seconding the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Lesser. Councillor Cordy.
Thanks, Mayor. Look, I'd speak against the motion. A couple of points I would make. Council does have provisions and procedures in place for dealing with ratepayers that are experiencing financial problems. And I would also note that there's sectors of our community that are travelling along business as usual. I know COVID-19 is impacting very broadly, but there's quite a lot of ratepayers that are not being financially impacted. In terms of the proposal for a 0% rate increase, what that does is it impacts on the financial sustainability of council, not just in this year, but every other year that follows, and that's why that we should be adopting the recommended 2% rate increase, because that keeps our budget in pace with CPI, and so there's that element. The other element is that which Max already touched on, Councillor Lesser already touched on. We have timelines, and the budget process has been delayed already, and I certainly do not support it being delayed further. We've got a timeline where we have to get our endorsed budget through to the minister, and I believe we should be approving the budget as it stands tonight, and certainly in the next several months we could talk about further budget initiatives that we may take when we see how COVID-19 pans out later this year and early next year. But at this point in time, I support the budget that council has before it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cordy. Any other? Yes, Councillor Petruska.
Yeah, I also wish to speak against this motion. And we've been talking about this budget for over 6 months now. It's been a fairly long and drawn out process. And we've had a lot of conversation about it. This is not something that's just popped up. And probably the irony here is that prior to this budget going out to public consultation, I was the one that asked about a 0% budget and asked about the implications. And our finance officer did the numbers on the implications and came back to all of us in meetings. So this is not something new. This is something we're aware of, and we've had discussions about a 0%. And that was my initial view. But after it was explained that leaves $400,000 approximately out of this budget. So that's $400,000 of cuts we would have to make to this budget. And one of the things about this budget is we actually wanted to make sure that spending stayed the same, to support local businesses, to make sure we keep getting infrastructure done rather than cutting funding, to make sure that when events do come back online, that we support those events financially, that we put money into employment and people working for the benefit of the Shire. To pull $400,000 out would put that at risk. And when Councillor Gardner said this is a one-off cost, well, it's not a one-off cost because it's 400,000. If we go 0% on this budget, that's 400,000 this year. But because the government has imposed a rate cap every year, that's $400,000 less for every year for the next 10 years. So that's $4 million. Over 10 years, that's $4 million that our budget's going to be out. So it doesn't just do a one-off for next year. There's no provision to make this up for the next council who are going to be left with this to try to make that up the next time, because they're going to have a roughly 2% or thereabouts cap on the rates. So they can only get back in that year the $400,000 that we're going to cut off this year under this proposal. They can't get the 400,000 and another 400. They can't make it back up and go 4% if things go really well. And every other council for the next 9 years after that again are going to have the same problem. The other thing is that it's a 2% rates increase, but this is predicated on, which Councillor Gardner wants a 0. 2% is less than the current level of CPI. Council still has to pay for road materials, for stationery, for computers, for power, for everything else that is going up by CPI in some cases, certainly in road materials, because a lot of it's harder to get, is actually going up further than that, which puts us further behind the 8 ball. And our property valuations come back with an approximate increase of 8.95% in property valuations. So effectively, people's properties are worth nearly 9% more than they were last year, and we're only going to charge them 2% more in rates. So they're actually getting it would be hard for somebody that is struggling, but only a few people are struggling. The other point I would make is that this did go out for public consultation. Anyone could have commented on it. The public consultation process, we got 6 people out of a Shire of 19,000 people. 6 people commented on the budget. 3 of those people commented on wanting a 0% increase. Out of 19,000 people in this Shire, we've got 3 people wanting a 0% or suggesting a 0% rate. You know, that to me is just not enough. If we had hundreds of people, I might have a different view, but we might have to make some really radical changes. The other issue would be that there's a legal problem. The budget legally under the Local Government Act, I think it is, has to be passed and to the minister by the end of August. So if we approved Councillor Gardner's motion tonight, regardless of the intent behind it, and I'm sure it's all good intents behind it, that would put in a legal issue, because it would have to go back out for public consultation. It would all start again. We might be lucky to get it to September meeting. It might go through to the October meeting, and it would put us in a legal position where the council would actually go against the Local Government Act. So I think we've had plenty of time to discuss this. We actually have discussed this. We've had discussions about it, and the majority view has been that we stick to the 2%. So I speak very strongly against the 0% and stick to the 2%.
Thank you, Councillor Petruska. Yes, Councillor Neiman.
Yes, sir. It's hard following Councillor Petruska because he managed to touch on all the points I was practicing. But 2% is not that big when compared with the CPI and the EBA arrangements. So I'm against Councillor Gardner's motion.
Thanks, Councillor Neiman. Councillor Machin, do you wish to speak? You're muted.
Yes, sorry. Thank you. No, I don't wish to speak because it's all been said far better than I could have said it. So thank you.
Thank you. All right. Well, we put it to the vote. So those in favour of Councillor Gardner's motion? Those against? The matter is not carried. It is defeated. Thank you. So that means that motion lapses. Well, it doesn't lapse, it's defeated. So I'm now looking for a motion on the budget. Would someone like to move a motion on the budget for me?
Okay. I'll do
Councillor Lesser.
it. Look, it's pages long. I recommend that that we adopt the budget as it is written. And can we? I don't know what to do here. Whether we can share a screen or there's 2 pages. I think in the past we haven't read out all those items.
I'm not expecting you to read it out. It's okay.
So what I'm doing here is I'm going to say that, you know, as recommended.
Okay, so I think the 2 main points that you need to make are the rate rise, percentage rate rise that you're moving, and the differential rates. Oh, wait a minute. Gussie is saying to item 2 to 15, please. Really? Oh, yes, you're moving items 2 to 15.
Okay. So I'll move the yes, because we dealt with item number 1 previously. So I'll be moving items 2 to 15.
Yes, thank you. Out of the meeting when item 1 was approved, Councillor Machen. So I think we will just have to leave it that you're moving the as printed in the agenda papers, and you're proposing a rate rise of 2%.
Yes.
And differential rates as per where we have 100% farm rate, commercial rate 130%, land management rate 80%, vacant land 200%, and recreational 0%.
Yep.
Okay. Oh, so would you like to put all this up on the screen? Or yes, Councillor. Oh, so wait a minute. I've got a mover for this. Councillor Trusma, are you seconding it? Thank you. We might as well put it on the screen. I think that would be a good idea.
We haven't got that yet.
No, well, technical difficulties. Here it is, right? Everyone's gone small. Good.
Hang on. I've been knocked out again.
Now, what do we got here? Moved Councillor Lesser. Right, good. So we've got the first 6 there. Okay. And now it's scrolling on to the next page. And then there's the differential rates. And then the last page, all of it. Great. Okay, so I've got a mover for this. Councillor Lesser, have I got a seconder? Oh dear, no, I can't see everybody.
I think, hang on. I think Councillor Machen was seconding.
Okay, thank you. That's better. No, everyone's disappeared. All right. Now here we are, all reappearing. Councillor Neiman's disappeared. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I've got a quorum. Great. Is there any opposition?
I can see everybody. They're all back again.
Okay. Everyone's looking a bit frozen to me. That means I must be frozen. Well,
I think, gee, Christine, we're all fine.
No, we're okay. Everybody's okay. I think it's you now that's frozen. It must be the climate down at Taradale. Can you hear us? Mayor, can you hear us? Hey, Mayor.
We can see her. She's on mute.
I can hear you. All right.
Mayor, can you hear us?
I can hear you. I can hear you. I feel like I'm in a spaceship. Okay, I've got it. I can see everyone except Councillor Gardner and Councillor Neiman.
Well, I can see them up
I'm
here,
here.
so I can verify I can see them.
Good. I believe that. Yep, great. Everyone's there. Terrific. Quick. Right. So, is there any opposition to Councillor Lesser's motion to adopt the budget with the conditions as printed? No. Okay. Well, in that case, I've got a mover, Councillor Lesser. I've got a seconder in Councillor Machin. Is that right? And would you like to speak to the motion, Councillor Lesser?
Look, I will just briefly. It's a bit of fun as well. I'm forever linked to this budget because on the front page of the actual budget report, there happens to be a nice photograph of my car sitting outside the council building. So that's just a bit of an aside there. But this budget's a hard one. I know it's going to change. I know that the COVID-19 situation is going to alter the budget as it goes along. That's to be expected. It's just not going to be cast in stone as previous budgets were. Look, we've done the best that we can do. We've had lengthy discussions, as was mentioned before, around the table. It's hard, it's difficult, it's stressful. We're all being affected. But this seems to me to be about the best way forward in a sort of in the middle of the road type situation. And we don't know what the future is going to bring. But I think as councillors now, and whoever's going to be the councillors in the future, will have enough ability to make alterations to the budget where it's necessary so that our community doesn't suffer. So we've done the best that we can do, community, and it's a difficult situation. So therefore, I'm just going with it. Thank you, Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Lesser. Councillor Machin.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Deputy Mayor. It has been a long journey in which our staff have played a very good role. They haven't just gone asking, they have squeezed and really tried to work out what's best. They've, as much as possible, tried to understand the impact of COVID on our community, as well as on our own financial resources and how they interact with each other. We don't yet know how it's impacted fully, and we are operating in an environment in which we won't know until it's happened. And that's the new normal, I guess. What we've come up with is a budget that looks as though we're quite in deficit, but I'm not that concerned about that because there's a little bit of accounting sleight of hand here in that income that we should have received in this budget, we actually received in the last budget. So that was $2.75 million of the $3.4 million that we're in deficit. And I'm not worried about that because we've had at least 5 years of surpluses. Our liquidity ratios are very sound. We've got very low borrowings, and our cash holdings are sufficient to allow us to have a deficit. So it's not something that we're, no one really wants to go into deficit, but as Councillor Petrusma indicated in the earlier discussion, we need to do that because we need to keep supporting our community. And that's what we need to do. And we still don't yet know how we're going to need to support our community as this keeps playing out. So things will change, and the next council will have some real considerations as we as a whole organisation observe and learn and adapt to the best we can for our community, because that's why we're here. So I commend this budget to my fellow councillors, and in so doing, I thank our staff for the incredible amount of additional work they've had to do and the lens they've used when they've gone through that additional work, which is fully around how do we best serve our community in these difficult times. So thank you to them, and thank you to my fellow councillors, and thank you to Councillor Gardner for raising that difficult issue. and I commend it to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Machin. Other councillors wish to speak? I guess you've spoken in the previous debate, so I'll let you off the hook here. It is the budget, but everyone's spoken with passion, one way or another. And so I think I will.
Christine, there was people who want to talk.
Yeah, just quickly, Mayor, I want to speak.
Yeah.
I'll say
Okay,
something.
Councillor Patricia. Yep. Okay. Good.
I'll
Councillor
go
Patricia.
first, and Stephen wants to go after me. Just briefly, I just want to make sure that people are aware. I mean, we have given consideration to whether or not a rates increase is essential, and I've already reiterated the reasons why we couldn't go 0%. It's a bit of a double-edged sword because some people are going to hurt, and we understand that. It won't be an enormous number of people, but some people will hurt, and there is a hardship policy, as Councillor Cordy pointed out, and I would urge anyone that is having difficulty to contact council and speak to council before they get into difficulty, and we can help resolve that. So it's not like we're not going to try to help people, but I think that the double-edged part of the sword is if we cut the spending, it does cut the possible COVID recovery and cuts assistance to businesses and employment. So I definitely would like to see everyone support the budget, and it may well be that the next council that comes in October may have to change it as they go along, but we need to have this done. We need to have it locked away by the end of this month, and the amount of work that's been put in by our council staff to get to this point has been incredible. So I just urge everyone to support the budget, and for those that may have difficulty, to contact council and work through any issues they might have.
Thank you, Councillor Patricia. Now, who else wishes to speak? Yes, Councillor Gardner.
Oh, you can see. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm speaking for it. I'm not going to go over the 0% and all that sort of stuff. I think initially, I think what has been underrated has been mentioned in Bronwyn and that the amount of work our staff, particularly Caroline and Lisa's sort of area and that area is put in, is really quite phenomenal, considering we've had to deal with COVID, its impact. Staff working from home, a whole heap of things, plus to do this budget, and the staff really have done, probably, and Caroline and her team particularly, some really long hours to get here, and so I think that's really good. I sort of agree and I don't agree with some other, but I don't want to get into it too much. But for me, I think that whilst we haven't seen the full impact of COVID, we know it's coming, and the reality is it's going to be the next council dealing with it. So without a reduction in expenditure, they're going to have to drop something. So that's going to be their up to them, and good luck to them. For me, though, in this budget, and the one thing can't be dropped is the Maldon Streetscape. And it can't be dropped because it's a government grant. So I just wanted to point that out. It's in there finally, and also the Maldon design guidelines. So these are two great initiatives that I'm really happy to see. And overall, it's a good budget. And I think, as others have said, it is one that is aimed at supporting our community, and particularly through infrastructure and some local stuff. And I think that is just really good.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you. Now, who else wishes to speak? No? Okay, right. I'm not seeing any hands waving at the side or anything. Good. All right, well, let's just put it to the vote because it's the budget. So those in favour of Councillor Lasse's motion, good. And unanimously passed. Thank you very much, councillors. And I'd just like to add my congratulations to the staff, especially the Executive Manager of Corporate Affairs, Carolyn Ross, who has done a fantastic job to produce the budget, not once, but twice. And of course, all the staff who nominated their projects, their savings, their ways of which to support the COVID-19 support line in many ways. Yeah. So that's passed. That's good. And we're all still here on the screen. Good. And everyone's moving. So let's quickly go on to the next item, which is the financial hardship policy, which we've just been talking about in relation to those people who might be having difficulty with paying their council rates. So, councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Cordy.
Thanks, Mayor. The recommendation as written that council adopts the financial hardship policy. Thank you.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Petrusa, thank you. Is there any opposition? No. Councillor Cordy, would you like to speak to your motion?
Just briefly, Mayor, I think we've covered it, but the financial hardship policy is designed to assist ratepayers who are identified as experiencing financial hardship in relation to payment of their property rates and charges. The policy details several important issues concerning financial hardship, particularly the nature, indicators, and identification of financial hardship, as well as the application and assessment process. So I just recommend to any of our ratepayers that are experiencing genuine financial hardship to contact our staff at our office, and they'll help them work through that process. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cordy. Any other councillor wish to speak? No, I declare the matter carried. Thank you. Moving on to the other side of the coin, the revenue and debt collection policy. Again, it's a policy that is for adoption. Do I have a motion? Councillors? Councillor Machin, thank you. Is there a seconder? Oh, presumably your motion is to adopt the policy. I take it. Is there a seconder? I need a seconder for this motion. Thank you, Councillor Neiman. Is there any opposition? No. Thank you. Councillor Machin, would you like to speak to your motion?
Thank you, Mayor. It's a really putting down guidelines that we haven't had before, and it is about flowing through how we, before we go down to the very, very last bit, which is sell the land. This is about what are the steps that we go through for the ratepayers to pay what they owe, and for our other ratepayers not to have people getting all the services but not paying rates. So it's just a very simple, very plain English set of procedures. And before anybody has their house sold under them, which I hope never gets to that stage, it would have to come to council at that point. I think it's interesting that so many of our unpaid rates go back quite a long way from memory, and are quite often to do with very old subdivisions. So it's just, I think there's a lot of legacy we have to fix up, and this will guide our officers to do that. And very few modern ones that we have problems with. So yes, let's get this guidance so that our officers are assured that whatever they're doing, they're supported by council in their processes. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Machin. Councillor Neiman, did you wish to speak? Yeah, you have to unmute yourself, Councillor Neiman. Oh, no, you've muted and then unmuted. Now you have to. Yep, that's good.
Good, that gave me time to collect my thoughts. I agree with the policy, but I also note that we have quite a few who haven't paid rates for a long time. So as long as this policy is applied with compassion where necessary, I think it's a good way to go.
Thank you, Councillor Neiman. Any other councillor wish to speak? No? I'll declare the matter carried and move on to the last policy and the trio, which is the fee waiver policy. Fee waiver policy. So this is a new one, I think. Do I have a motion, councillors? Councillor Gardner.
Yeah, just as printed.
Thank you. To adopt the fee waiver policy.
Yeah.
Do I have a seconder? Come on, councillors. Thank you. Councillor Petrusa. Any opposition? No. Councillor Gardner, do you wish to speak to the motion?
No, not really.
No, not really.
Okay. All right. Councillor Petrusa? Any other councillor wish to speak? No. All right. Well, it certainly gives guidelines. I declare the matter carried and hope it proves a useful policy for our officers when deciding who should have a fee waiver and who shouldn't. There's nothing based on favouritism anymore. So now that's the end of our officer reports, and we come to our delegate report. And it's time for our CEO to make an appearance. Here he is, and he's going to hopefully share the screen, or Ms. Shepherd is going to, somebody's going to share the screen and show us the report on what the CEO and the Mayor have been up to.
Thanks very much, Mayor. You happy for me to start?
Certainly, sir.
Thank you. Can I just first of all say a big thank you to Director of Corporate Community Services, Lisa Knight, Mayor, for stepping in last week and allowing me to have a week off. Thanks very much again, Director Knight, for being the acting CEO last week. Very much appreciated, and to everyone who supported her in doing that as well. Mayor, you've all talked a lot about the work of the staff involved in the budget process, and attached to that is very much the annual plan process. We've talked about how we all had to do it twice. It has been an enormous effort by absolutely Carolyn Ross and her team, supported by Lisa. It's a big organisational effort as well. So I really want to add my thanks to everybody in the organisation who's had to, as you say, do it not once but twice this year. It's a huge effort to do it once. Doing it twice is just difficult to describe how much effort that's taken. But with that as well, Mayor, I just really want to acknowledge as well how tough that is for you guys to have to do the trade-offs that you've had to do. Listening to the conversation tonight, I would hope that everybody's appreciated that it's not been an easy process at all for anybody involved, and none more difficult than the decisions that you've had to make to lead us over the next 12 months in where we invest and how we try to help the community. So thank you all very much for that. Mayor, jumping to our list, you can see in there just the quick scan through there. There's many items in there that relate to COVID-19, which was substantially as a result of the outbreak that happened at Don KR a few weeks ago. And there's just a couple of comments I want to make there, Mayor. Again, Don KR did an extraordinary job, not just at the time of managing the incident itself, but the work that they did in the lead up to, once they learned about COVID-19, as the rest of the world did earlier this year, the work that they did inside their factory with their staff was really quite extraordinary to ensure that that spread, which is inevitable in a lot of businesses, Mayor, we have to accept that. They did so much work to make sure that if it did get in there, that it didn't spread very far, and we've seen the results of that work. So I just want to say a big congratulations again to them for the work that they did to prevent that event from being much worse than what it's shown itself to be. Alongside that, Mayor, I also want to acknowledge that Castlemaine Health and the Castlemaine District Community Health particularly, along with so many of our staff, have done an amazing job to support Don KR all the way through that process of having to do the testing of 1,400 strong staff that they have, helping them through that process, making sure that people were tested as they were required to be by the HHS. Has been a mammoth effort, and making sure that everybody was as good as they could be through that process has just been a fantastic effort by everybody concerned, as well as our good friends down the road in Bendigo, including particularly Bendigo Health, and also in other shires where hospitals had to help out with some of that testing because they do have such a wide number of places that their staff come from, Mayor. So I just really wanted to acknowledge all of that great work by so many people to respond to that pretty frightening event for a lot of people, Mayor. The other one I wanted to note, and you may wish to speak to it as well, Mayor, was we had the fantastic opportunity to spend about 45 minutes with our new Minister for Local Government, Sean Lean MP, at his invitation. We were assisted in that discussion by Marie Edwards as well. And it was just a terrific discussion, Mayor, where I certainly felt we spoke at length about what's happening in our communities, what our community was about, the features of our community, the challenges that our community's got at the moment, and what we're aspiring for our community, both in projects as well as activities in the coming years. And we just had a wonderful hearing with him there, I think, and he asked us a lot of questions after we stopped talking about things that we'd raised with him, and it just showed a fantastic interest in our community and in us as an organisation as well. So I thought that was fantastic, and to the point of even wanting us to send some more information about some of the initiatives that we've put forward into our community to try and support them generally in the long term, with projects like the Health Precinct Initiative, which is very much a big and long-term initiative, as well as the shorter term ones such as the Get Lost Initiative, which is to support our creatives in getting their work out when they can no longer do that physically. So we will certainly take him up on that offer and make sure that he does know about those great initiatives, Mayor, because he wants to very much, I understand, promote the great work of local government. And I think that's just fantastic to hear that from the Minister for Local Government, saying that he sees that as an important part of his role. So terrific meeting there as well, Mayor. I'll leave it at that. Happy to answer questions about any of the items that are on the list there that councillors want me to discuss, but as you'll see, a substantial number of them do relate to COVID-19 responses. Thanks, Mayor.
Thanks, Mr. Bazard. You were very busy during that time. It was a very nerve-wracking time, wondering how things were going to go with the Donkey outbreak. And I have to say, it was quite remarkable the way things have panned out, and touch wood, that will stay the same. So I was, yes, very nervous for a while, as we all were. Yes, and the meeting with our new Minister for Local Government, he was certainly interested in what was going on. That was, I think it was more than just a token gesture. He really liked the story about the Get Lost initiative to support our creatives. I think he's quite keen to pass that information on to other shires, because it is, we know the government's put up, federal government, is it 250 million across the country for the creative industries to try and support them. It's now, we're all becoming acutely aware of to what extent, well, how many people work in the creative industries and how many are severely impacted, unable to perform, unable to get their artwork or their music out there in public, and how they really are an important part of our economy. They're not just a nice to have, they're central to our well-being, really, as a community, as a species almost. So I think everyone's looking for ways to support our creative people, and Castlemaine's known for having a large number. So, and of course, we're looking forward to hearing progress report on the Get Lost initiative, but sometime in the future. Anyway, I'll leave it there. Thanks for your report. And I think that brings us to our confidential items. So I think this is a time when we actually bid farewell to our audience, whoever they might be. And Councillor Machin, I'm looking for a motion to close the meeting. Is that what you're doing? Thank you very much. Would you like to read it out officially?
That council closes the ordinary meeting of council 16 June, but it's actually not the 16th of June here. We just need to change that. Ordinary council meeting of the 18th of August 2020, in accordance with section 66(2)(a) of the Local Government Act 2020, in order to consider confidential information.
This is why I got you to read it out. Thank you. Do I have a seconder for that? Thank you, Councillor Lesser. Any opposition? I hope not. No, good. Okay, well, I declare the matter carried. And with that, I will close the meeting and bid everyone good night. Thank you. No, don't